Hello, especially for the Dirty Secrets channel.
The pressure Alex stared at the blinking cursor on the screen, the empty document mocking their inability to start the final paper for Professor Harmon's advanced economics course. The deadline loomed just 3 days away, and between part-time work at the campus coffee shop, other finals, and family obligations during the upcoming holiday break, the pressure felt unbearable. "You look like you're about to implode," remarked Jamie, Alex's roommate, who had just returned from the library with an armful of books. Jamie's effortless academic success had always been a source of both inspiration and intimidation to Alex. "This paper is worth 40% of my grade," Alex muttered, rubbing tired eyes that burned from hours of staring at an empty screen. "And I haven't even started. If I don't ace this, I can kiss my scholarship goodbye." The scholarship was Alex's lifeline. First-generation college student with parents who worked double shifts to help with expenses not covered by financial aid. The pressure wasn't just about grades. It was about not letting down the people who had sacrificed everything to get them here. Jamie hesitated before speaking, setting the stack of books on the cluttered desk. "You know, I took Harmon's class last year. I still have my final paper. Got an A dashed at." Their eyes met, and the unspoken suggestion hung in the air between them. "Just to get some ideas about structure," Jamie added carefully. "Might help you get unstuck." Alex nodded slowly, knowing that even considering the offer crossed a line they'd always promised themselves they wouldn't cross. The decision that night, sleep evaded Alex. The ceiling of their dorm room became a projection screen for worst-case scenarios. Losing the scholarship, dropping out, returning home a failure, watching classmates graduate while they struggled to pay off student loans with a minimum wage job. The ethical dilemma twisted like a knife. They had never cheated before, had prided themselves on academic integrity, despite the crushing workload of a double major. Alex's phone buzzed with a text from their mother. "So proud of you, sweetie. Can't wait to see you at Christmas. Dad's picking up extra shifts so we can get you that laptop for next semester." Guilt compounded guilt. Their parents believed in them so completely, sacrificed so willingly. How could Alex admit that they might fail this course, that the scholarship might disappear? By morning, exhaustion and desperation had worn down Alex's resistance. Jamie's paper sat in their email inbox, sent at 2 a.m. with a casual message. "Just for reference. Don't copy it word for word, obviously, but the sources are solid and Harmon really liked my approach to the Wilson theory section." Alex downloaded the document, fingers hesitating over the keyboard. "I'll just use the structure," they whispered to the empty room. "And some of the sources. That's not really cheating." But even as these justifications left their lips, Alex knew they were lying to themselves. The submission for the next 48 hours. Alex barely left their desk, alternating between Jamie's paper and their own document, copying passages, then rewording them, borrowing ideas while trying to disguise their origins. What began as just using the structure evolved into something far more dishonest. By the time Alex finished, the paper was a patchwork, parts original, parts paraphrased, parts directly lifted from Jamie's work. Self-disgust warred with pragmatism as they proofread it one final time. "It's just this once," Alex murmured, the mantra of so many who step over ethical lines. "Just to keep the scholarship. Next semester I'll manage my time better." The submission itself was anticlimactic, just a few clicks, an uploaded file, a confirmation screen. It wasn't an exact copy. They had changed the introduction, reworked some paragraphs, and added a few personal touches. But the core arguments, most of the research, and several entire sections were Jamie's work. The relief was immediate, but hollow. As soon as they clicked submit, a weight seemed to lift, only to be replaced by a heavier, more persistent one. Still, what was done. Professor Harmon, who taught hundreds of students each semester, would never notice. Alex closed the laptop and finally slept for the first time in days. Dreams troubled by faceless accusers. "How'd it go?" Jamie asked when they met at dinner that evening. "Fine," Alex said, avoiding eye contact. Thanks for the inspiration. Jamie nodded, something knowing in their expression. No problem. We all need help sometimes. As they ate, Alex wondered if Jamie knew exactly how much inspiration had been taken, and whether Jamie had offered the paper out of genuine desire to help or as a test that Alex had failed. The discovery the semester ended. Holidays came and went. Alex returned to campus with renewed determination to stay ahead of assignments and avoid any situation that might tempt another ethical lapse. For 2 weeks, everything seemed normal. Professor Harmon had not yet posted grades for the previous semester, but this wasn't unusual for a professor who prided himself on thorough feedback. Then, on a snowy Wednesday afternoon, Alex received an email that made their blood run cold. Please see me during office hours this Thursday regarding your final paper from last semester. Professor Harmon, no explanation, no hint at what he wanted to discuss. But Alex knew. The next 2 days passed in a fog of anxiety. Sleep became impossible. Food tasted like cardboard. Every scenario played out in their mind, each ending worse than the last. Academic probation, loss of scholarship, expulsion, the crushing disappointment in their parents' eyes. When Thursday arrived, Alex walked to Harmon's office with leaden feet, wondering if they were heading toward their academic execution. The hallway of the economics building seemed impossibly long, each step bringing them closer to consequences they convinced themselves they could avoid. Outside Harmon's office, Alex paused, hand raised to knock, nearly turning to flee. But there was nowhere to run that the truth wouldn't eventually find them. The confrontation come in. Professor Harmon called in response to Alex's hesitant knock. The office was smaller than Alex had imagined. Bookshelves crammed with economic texts and academic journals, walls decorated with framed degrees, and faded photographs of Harmon with various groups of students through the years. Sit down, please, Harmon said, gesturing to a chair across from his cluttered desk. His expression was unreadable, neither angry nor sympathetic. Do you know why you're here? He asked, his voice surprisingly gentle despite the severity in his eyes. I think so, Alex whispered, the admission catching in their throat. Your paper contained substantial portions that matched another student's work from a previous semester. He pushed a document across the desk, a side-by-side comparison highlighting the identical sections in angry red. There were more of them than Alex had realized, the evidence damning and undeniable. I'm sorry, Alex said, the words feeling pathetically inadequate against the weight of the transgression. Why, he asked. Not accusatory, but genuinely curious. You're one of my brightest students. Your class participation showed real understanding of the material. You clearly have the capacity to do this work legitimately. The dam broke, and Alex found themselves explaining everything. The time pressure, the scholarship anxiety, the momentary weakness that led to a decision that now threatened everything. To their surprise, tears came, not calculated to earn sympathy, but born from genuine remorse and fear. I've never done anything like this before, Alex concluded, wiping at their eyes. I know it doesn't matter, but I've been sick about it since I submitted it. I knew it was wrong. Professor Harmon listened without interruption, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. When Alex finally fell silent, he sighed, the sound heavy with disappointment. Knowing something is wrong and choosing not to do it anyway, that's the real test of character, he said quietly. One you failed. The words, devoid of anger but full of truth, cut deeper than any shouting could have. The consequences, I can't ignore this, Professor Harmon said after a long moment of silence. Academic integrity is the foundation of everything we do here. Without it, the degrees we confer are meaningless. Alex nodded, fighting fresh tears. I'll have to report this to the Academic Integrity Committee. They'll decide the appropriate action, but it typically ranges from a failing grade on the assignment to failing the course. In serious cases, or for repeat offenders, suspension or expulsion is possible. each word struck like a physical blow. This single mistake could derail everything: the scholarship, graduation, future career prospects. "What about Jamie?" Alex asked, suddenly realizing the implications for their roommate. Providing your paper knowingly to assist in plagiarism is also an academic integrity violation, Harmon replied. Both parties are responsible. The guilt doubled as Alex realized they had dragged their friend down too. Their selfish decision now threatened two academic careers, two futures. Will my parents be notified?" Alex asked, voice barely audible. "The university treats these matters as confidential educational records," Harmon explained. "But depending on the committee's decision and its impact on your academic standing, you may need to explain the situation to them yourself, especially if it affects your scholarship." The thought of that conversation, of admitting to their hardworking, proud parents that they had cheated, was almost more terrifying than facing the committee. "What happens now?" Alex asked. "You'll receive formal notification of the charge and a date for your hearing. You'll have the opportunity to present your case to the committee." Harmon paused. "My advice? Complete honesty. They've heard every excuse imaginable. What they rarely hear is unvarnished accountability." As Alex rose to leave, legs unsteady, Harmon added, "This mistake doesn't define you, Alex. How you respond to it might." The waiting the next 3 weeks were purgatory. Alex attended classes robotically, constantly checking email for the dreaded summons from the Academic Integrity Committee. Every ping of their phone induced a flutter of panic. Jamie wasn't speaking to them. After being called to Harmon's office the day after Alex, Jamie had returned to their shared room, packed an overnight bag, and announced they were staying with a friend until they could arrange a room change. "You told him I knew," Jamie had demanded, eyes flashing with betrayal. "That I gave you the paper to copy? I didn't realize he would." Alex had begun. "Save it." Jamie had cut them off. "I was trying to help you, and you dragged me down with you." Word had somehow spread, as it always does in the closed ecosystem of a college campus. Alex felt judging eyes everywhere, in the dining hall, the library, walking across the quad. Some friends still stood by them, but others maintained a noticeable distance, as if academic dishonesty might be contagious. Alex's parents called twice a week, as usual, asking about classes, mentioning how excited they were about Alex's upcoming summer internship, an opportunity that might evaporate if the committee's decision was severe. Each conversation became an exercise in evasion. Each lie another brick in the wall of shame Alex was building around themselves. Finally, the email arrived. The hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Alex would have 15 minutes to present their case before the committee made its decision. The formal charge was academic dishonesty through plagiarism, and the potential sanctions listed made Alex's stomach churn. That night, Alex drafted what felt like a dozen different statements, trying to find the words that might mitigate the damage. Each attempt sounded more hollow than the last. In the end, they decided Harmon was right. Only the unvarnished truth would do. The hearing Tuesday arrived with the weight of inevitability. Alex dressed carefully in their most professional outfit, as if appearing responsible might somehow counterbalance the irresponsible act that had brought them here. The committee room felt suffocating. A long table with 7 professors from different departments, all regarding Alex with neutral expressions that revealed nothing of what they might be thinking. Professor Harmon sat among them, his presence both reassuring and terrifying. The committee chair, a silver-haired woman from the philosophy department, explained the process. The charge would be read. Alex would have 15 minutes to respond. The committee would ask questions, and then they would deliberate privately. Alex had prepared a statement, but when the time came to speak, the carefully rehearsed words felt hollow. "I could give you excuses about stress and pressure," Alex said instead, voice steadier than expected. "They'd all be true, but they don't justify what I did. I betrayed my own values and the trust of this university. I can only say that I understand the seriousness of my actions. I deeply regret them. And if given another chance, I would make very different choices. Alex continued, explaining the circumstances without using them as excuses, acknowledging the impact on Jamie, and expressing genuine remorse not just for getting caught, but for the violation of trust. Questions followed, probing, sometimes uncomfortably direct. Why not ask for an extension? Had they cheated before? Did they understand the implications for their future career if this pattern continued? I was too proud to ask for help, Alex admitted. I've always been the one who had everything under control, who never needed extensions or special treatment. I was afraid admitting I was struggling would make me look incapable. By the end, Alex felt emotionally drained, but also strangely unburdened. The truth, however painful, was finally fully exposed. We'll email you our decision within 48 hours. The committee chair said, "You're dismissed." Walking out of the room, Alex felt oddly calm. Whatever came next, at least the waiting and pretending were over. The decision 2 days later, the committee's decision arrived. Alex had been refreshing their email obsessively, barely sleeping or eating. The uncertainty worse than any definitive punishment might have been. The email appeared during breakfast, the notification causing Alex to spill coffee across the table. With trembling hands, they opened it. After reviewing the evidence and your testimony, the Academic Integrity Committee has determined that you violated the university's academic integrity policy. Taking into account that this is your first offense, your otherwise strong academic record, and your forthright acknowledgement of responsibility, the committee has decided: 1. You will receive a failing grade for the assignment in question. 2. You must complete an academic integrity education program before the end of the semester. 3. You will be placed on academic probation for 2 semesters. 4. You must write a reflection paper addressing the importance of academic integrity. Further violations will result in more severe sanctions, including possible expulsion. Alex read the email 3 times. It was severe. The F on the paper meant they would barely pass Harmon's class, dropping their GPA dangerously close to the minimum required for the scholarship. But it wasn't the academic death sentence they had feared. No suspension, no expulsion, a chance to rebuild. The relief was so intense it manifested physically. Alex sank into a chair, legs suddenly weak, breath coming in gasps that were half laughter, half sob. The hard part came next. That evening, Alex called their parents. The conversation was every bit as difficult as imagined. Their initial confusion giving way to disappointment, so profound it was almost tangible through the phone. Their father fell silent, while their mother asked repeatedly, "But why didn't you just ask for help? You know we would have supported you." "I didn't want you to think I couldn't handle it," Alex admitted. "You've both sacrificed so much for me to be here. We're proud of you for who you are, not just what you achieve," their mother said finally. "Remember that." The conversation ended without resolution, the disappointment still palpable, but with a promise to talk more when Alex came home for spring break. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a path toward it. The rebuilding the next semester was an uphill battle. Alex took on extra credit when never possible, scheduled weekly meetings with professors to ensure they understood assignments, and spent more time in the library than anywhere else on campus. The Academic Integrity Program, which Alex had initially viewed as just a punishment, proved unexpectedly valuable. It forced them to confront the real-world implications of cutting corners, how those same behaviors in professional settings could have far more severe consequences than academic probation. Integrity isn't about following rules when someone's watching, the program facilitator told the small group of students. It's about holding yourself to a standard even when no one would know the difference. The reflection paper, too, became more than a box to check. Writing it forced Alex to articulate why they had made the choices they had, and what they had learned from the consequences. Slowly, relationships began to heal. Jamie eventually accepted Alex's apology, though they were never quite as close as before. Some friendships strengthened through the adversity, while others faded away. "People mess up," said Eli, one of the friends who had stuck around. "What matters is what you do next." Professor Harmon, surprisingly, became something of a mentor. When Alex approached him about an independent study opportunity, they expected rejection. Instead, Harmon agreed, with conditions. "I've seen brilliant careers derailed by ethical shortcuts," he told Alex during office hours one day. "I'd rather you learn this lesson now, under these conditions, than later when the stakes are much higher." The scholarship remained intact, though with a warning. Alex's parents, after the initial shock and disappointment, became supports again, more involved now, asking more specific questions about coursework and stress levels. "We're on your team," Alex's father said during spring break. "Always have been, but teams only work when everyone communicates." By the end of the year, the incident hadn't been forgotten, but it had begun to recede, becoming a painful lesson rather than a defining characteristic. The prospective 5 years later, Alex stood before a new graduating class as an alumni speaker, looking out at the sea of faces, hopeful, anxious, excited. They saw reflections of their younger self. The journey from that moment of ethical failure to this podium had been long. After graduation, Alex had completed a master's degree and now worked for an economic policy institute. Research published in respected journals. Reputation rebuilt brick by careful brick. "What I want to tell you today isn't the standard, work hard and follow your dream speech," Alex began. "Instead, I want to talk about failure, specifically, my biggest failure at this university." The auditorium fell silent as Alex recounted the story of their cheating, the consequences, and the long road back to academic and personal integrity. "That F on my paper ultimately taught me more than any ever could. It taught me that our integrity isn't defined by never making mistakes, but by how we respond when we do. It taught me that shortcuts undermine not just institutional trust, but self-trust." Alex paused, looking out at the attentive faces. "You will all face moments where the easy path and the right path diverge. When that happens, remember that your character is built in those moments of choice. And while rebuilding a damaged reputation is possible, it's far easier to protect it in the first place." From the faculty section, Professor Harmon, now department chair and grayer at the Temples, nodded slightly. "The scholar who wrote my favorite economic theory text once told me that all economic systems ultimately rest on trust." Alex continued. "The same is true of our personal and professional lives. Trust is the currency that matters most, and integrity is how we maintain its value." After the ceremony, a student approached Alex. "Thank you for your honesty," she said, anxiety visible in her tense posture. "I've been struggling with similar pressures." "Find better solutions than I did," Alex replied with a smile. "Ask for help. Request extensions. Take fewer classes if needed. The temporary setback is nothing compared to the cost of compromising your integrity." The student nodded, something like relief crossing her features. "I have a paper due Monday that I've been panicking about. I think I'll email my professor about an extension tonight." "That's a good start," Alex said. "And remember, struggling doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're learning." Walking across the familiar campus one last time, Alex reflected on the strange journey, how a moment of weakness had ultimately led to unexpected strength, and how the worst mistake had catalyzed the most important lesson, that integrity, once broken, could be restored, but the process exacted a price that far outweighed any temporary advantage gained by cutting corners. Near the library, Alex passed two students hunched over laptops, their faces tight with the familiar stress of finals week. For a moment, Alex considered stopping, sharing some hard-won wisdom about academic pressure and ethical choices. Instead, Alex simply smiled, trusting that like all valuable lessons, this one was best learned through one's own journey. hopefully with fewer detours than Alex's had required. The end.
Thank you for watching. If you liked the story, like, subscribe to the channel and share with your friends. Thank you.